Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in one's life where we no longer ask, can I change? But rather, what will it take for change to begin? And I speak to you not as someone with all the answers, but as one who took 5 small trembling steps over the course of just 7 days and found myself standing on holy ground. You see, transformation does not always arrive like a storm. Sometimes it whispers, and in just 7 days, 5 simple habits, so small, so often overlooked, became a mirror, a tool, and the first habit was silence. For just 10 minutes each morning, I sat with no noise, no scrolling, no voices, just stillness. And oh, how that stillness spoke. It revealed the unrest I had ignored and the peace that was waiting, not outside but within. You don't realize how much your soul longs for quiet until you stop giving it noise. The second habit was gratitude. Each night I wrote down 3 things, no matter how hard the day was. Some nights it was breath in my lungs, a glass of water, or simply the strength to keep going. But as I gave thanks, I saw the shift. The burden didn't vanish, but the blessing became louder. The third habit was rising early. And I know mornings are difficult, but there is something sacred about the hour before the world awakens. I didn't rise to be productive, but to be present. And in those early hours, I found clarity. Like the fog of life had lifted, and direction came slowly but surely. The fourth habit was surrender. Each day, I wrote one thing I was holding too tightly: control, fear, regret, and laid it down. Not with fanfare, not with a crowd watching, but in private. I said, not mine, but yours. And oh, the weight that lifted. The fifth habit was intentional kindness. Not random acts, but chosen one. A call, a message, a smile to a stranger. And it changed me more than them. You begin to see others not as interruptions, but as divine appointments. 5 habits, 7 days. And no, I didn't become perfect. I didn't reach the mountaintop, but I took a step. And sometimes one step is all it takes for heaven to meet earth. I urge you, don't wait for the perfect time. Start now. Start small. And you just might discover what I did. That a single week can begin to undo years of damage. The habits are not just routines, but spiritual seeds. And that transformation doesn't take a lifetime. Sometimes it just takes obedience. There is something profoundly divine about small beginnings. We live in a world obsessed with results, big breakthroughs, dramatic changes, overnight success. But, dear friend, the eternal often begins in the quiet. It unfolds not in the noise of achievement, but in the humility of the first step. And I believe with all my heart that what we do in small measure, when done with great faith, becomes the very foundation. You see, I had heard it so many times before. Start small. And I would nod, maybe even try for a day or two, but then let discouragement settle in when I didn't see immediate change. I misunderstood the purpose of small beginnings. I thought their value was in what they produce quickly. But the truth is, the power of small beginnings is not in how fast they grow, but in who they begin to shape you into. When I took on 5 simple habits for just 7 days, I did not expect fireworks. I was simply weary from my own inconsistency, weary from waiting for the right time to make a change. I started small because I had no other strength left. And what I discovered was this: heaven honors small steps. Heaven does not measure transformation in numbers or metrics. It measures it in surrender. Let me ask you, what if everything you're waiting for, praying for, hoping to see changed is on the other side of one tiny act of obedience? When a seed is planted in the earth, it doesn't shout. It doesn't draw attention. It disappears into the soil, hidden, and there, in the unseen place, it begins to die. Not because it is broken, but because it is becoming. That is the mystery and power of a small beginning. What looks insignificant is actually sacred. Some of the most significant changes in our lives begin with nothing more than a whisper. A single decision to begin. 7 days. That's all I committed to. Not perfection, not mastery. Just 7 days of faithfulness. And during those 7 days, I saw what small beginnings could do. They broke the lie of all or nothing. They silenced the voice that said, "You failed too many times." They reminded me that I did not need to have it all together to take one step. The very act of starting, even shakily, breathed life back into areas of my soul that had... You see, we often wait to feel ready. We wait for the perfect motivation, the right moment, the emotional high. But small beginnings rarely feel glamorous. They feel ordinary. But God works best in the ordinary. The routine, the hidden, the humble. What starts as discipline becomes devotion. What begins as routine becomes revelation. On the first morning of my habit journey, I remember sitting still for a moment and thinking, what difference will this make? It seemed too simple. But as I silenced that thought and moved forward anyway, I felt something shift. Not outside me, but... And when the change begins in you, it's only a matter of time before the fruit shows up around you. Small beginnings teach us something sacred. Obedience matters more than... We are not responsible for the harvest, only the planting. Too many delay obedience because they're looking for guaranteed results. But true faith does not wait for results. It acts. It surrenders the outcome and focuses on the process. So if you are listening or reading this right now thinking you're too far gone, too inconsistent, too tired to change anything in your life, may I remind you that even mountains move one pebble at a time. You don't need to do everything. You only need to begin. One prayer, one silent moment, one act of kindness, one step of faith. That is how heaven moves, through mustard seeds, not... And when you begin small, with sincere intent, you give heaven something to breathe on. You invite the divine into your routine. You make space for grace. And grace, when it enters, multiplies what you offer. So do not despise small beginnings. They are not weak. They are not unworthy. They are holy. Because every great move of change, every transformation, every healing, every revival starts with one step, one whisper of yes, one moment of surrender. You do not have to be strong to begin. You just have to begin. And when you do, you'll find that the smallest of beginnings can lead to the most miraculous. There is a strange and beautiful paradox in life, one that many never come to understand. What we often resist the most, discipline, is the very thing that leads us into the freedom we long for. We cry out for breakthrough, for peace, for clarity, for strength. And yet, when the path to those gifts is laid before us in the form of daily discipline, we hesitate, we retreat, we whisper, "I'm not ready. Oh, that's too hard." But listen closely now. True freedom does not come by chance, nor by emotional highs. It comes through consistent surrender, one small discipline at a time. We think of discipline as restriction, a loss of spontaneity, a chain that binds. But that is a misunderstanding. Discipline, when embraced in the right spirit, is not a prison. It is a path, a holy path. It is structure that leads to strength. It is rhythm that brings rest. It is a tool of transformation placed gently in the hands of a willing heart. Let me take you back to the beginning of my 7-day journey. I didn't feel disciplined. In fact, I felt scattered, tired, emotionally unstable. My days blurred together, and my focus was thin. I had been living reactively, responding to every demand, every emotion, every distraction. My soul felt like a house with no walls, and I longed for peace. So I chose 5 habits, not grand ones, not difficult ones, but intentional ones. And every day I practiced them, whether I felt like it or not. And something extraordinary happened. You see, the discipline doesn't feel good at first. It feels hard. It feels inconvenient. It often goes unnoticed. But it slowly begins to build something deep within you, something stronger than feeling, stronger than impulse, character. Discipline births. It doesn't make you rigid. It makes you rooted. There's a reason spiritual giants didn't live by emotion alone. They were people of rhythm, of quiet obedience. They did not wait for the world to settle before they moved. They moved with discipline, and in doing so they found a freedom that could not be touched by circumstance. For me, waking up early wasn't about productivity. It was about reclaiming my hours, setting my intention before the noise of the world began. At first, it was difficult. My body resisted. But by the 3rd morning, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control, not over everything around me, but over myself. And that is where true freedom lives, in self-mastery. Discipline quiets the noise. It says no to what is urgent so it can say yes to what is eternal. And hear me on this: discipline is not a punishment. It is not something reserved for the few or the extreme. It is a gift, a spiritual muscle that you build by saying, today I choose differently. Not because I feel it, but because I know it leads to life. The word tells us to follow our hearts. But your heart, if left undisciplined, will run wild in the fields of distraction and desire. The heart must be trained like a wild horse to carry you to purpose. And that training comes through daily, quiet, holy discipline in prayer, discipline in thought, discipline in how we speak, how we treat our bodies, how we respond to others. Not for the sake of performance, but for the sake of peace. Because peace is not found in the absence of pressure, but in the presence of order. Freedom is not waking up and doing whatever you want. Freedom is waking up and doing what is right and knowing you have the strength to do it. That strength does not come from emotion. It comes from discipline. And the beauty of it is this: the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Like walking, like breathing. What once felt forced becomes. Do not wait until you feel strong to practice discipline. It is through discipline that you become strong. Each time you choose discipline, you're choosing long-term freedom over short-term comfort. You're choosing alignment over chaos. You're saying, I will not be ruled by my impulses. I will be led by purpose. And that, my friend, is where true freedom is born. So let discipline not be a word you fear, but a doorway you step through. A doorway that leads not to restriction, but to peace. Not to burden, but to breakthrough. Not to emptiness, but to an unshakable freedom that no storm can steal. There is something that happens when the heart returns to alignment with what is eternal. In a world filled with noise, distraction, and endless decision-making, clarity has become a rare treasure. People are wandering, not because they don't have opportunity, but because they don't have direction. Their vision is clouded. Their minds are busy. Their souls are overwhelmed. And in the midst of all that confusion, they try to find peace through more effort, more planning, more strategy. But clarity, true clarity, doesn't come from more motion. It comes from alignment, spiritual alignment. When I set out on this 7-day journey of forming 5 simple habits, I did not realize how spiritually misaligned I had become. Oh, I believed, I prayed here and there. I knew what was right, but my soul was out of tune. Like an instrument that hadn't been played in a long time. There was sound, but no harmony. I was functioning, but I was not flowing. It wasn't until I paused, truly paused, to reconnect with the one who breathes life into purpose that I understood. Spiritual clarity only comes when your spirit is in alignment with your Creator. You can try to fix the outside all day long. You can change jobs, change environments, change routines. But if the inside remains disordered, no amount of shifting will bring peace. You will still feel foggy, confused, anxious, The answer is not outward change. It's inward alignment. On the second day of my habit journey, I woke up early. Not because I felt holy, but because I wanted to try. I made no grand plans. I simply sat, quiet. I opened my heart and whispered, "Speak, I'm listening." And in that stillness, I didn't hear an audible voice, but I felt a recentering, a quiet awareness, as if heaven was saying, "Now that you've slowed down, I can remind you who you are." That is what spiritual alignment does. It returns you to your original design. It silences the voices of fear, pride, pressure, and performance. And it brings the voice of God to the forefront again. You don't need a perfect routine to achieve this. You don't need hours of solitude or eloquent prayers. You simply need to realign intentionally. Clarity begins with connection. When your spirit connects with divine truth, your mind clears, your heart steadies. Your steps begin to make sense again. The fog lifts, not because all the answers arrive at once, but because peace comes before the answer. Let me tell you, clarity is not always about knowing every step ahead. Sometimes it's just about knowing the next right one. And you will rarely find that next step when your life is misaligned with what matters. So how do we realign? It begins with humility, with saying, "I cannot do this on my own." It continues with consistency, a choice every day to center yourself before you let the world in. That's what spiritual alignment requires. Priority. Not perfection, but priority. When you align your thoughts with God's thoughts, peace flows. When you align your desires with His will, resistance weakens. When you align your time with His presence, clarity rises like the morning sun. During the week, I practiced these habits. I began to see decisions differently. I wasn't overthinking every detail. I wasn't reacting emotionally. I felt anchored, not because I had everything figured out, but because I wasn't leading from emotion. I was leading from, and there's a vast difference. Emotion fades, alignment sustains. You might think spiritual alignment is something reserved for the deeply spiritual, the cold, the few. But that is not true. Spiritual alignment is for the tired mother, the overwhelmed student, the weary leader, the ordinary person who simply says, "I want to live with purpose." It is available to all who pause long enough to seek it. The clarity you're searching for is not hidden from you. It's hidden in Him. The moment you return to that alignment, even for a few minutes a day, you'll find yourself seeing clearer, walking steadier, breathing deeper. That's the power of spiritual alignment. It brings clarity without chaos. It leads without forcing. It answers without shouting. It reminds you that your life was never meant to be led by confusion, but by communion. So if you feel lost, uncertain, restless, don't chase more answers. Chase alignment. Return to stillness. Return to center. Return to the one who knows the end from the beginning. And in that place, you will find clarity waiting for you like the rising. There is a voice that never interrupts. It does not shout above the chaos. It does not compete with distractions. It waits patiently, silently. And when you finally turn down the volume of the world, you hear it. That voice is truth. That voice is presence. That voice is wisdom. And it can only be heard in silence. You see, I didn't always understand the value of silence. Like so many, I believed in filling every moment with sound, with conversation, with music, with media. The noise was comforting. It made me feel like I was moving, like something was happening. But over time, I realized that all that noise had drowned out something precious, the still small voice within. So when I began my 7-day habit journey, one of the first and most surprising disciplines I chose was silence. Just 10 minutes a day, not hours. Just 10 simple minutes of complete stillness. No phone, no talking, no music, no distractions. And let me be honest with you, at first it was uncomfortable. Not because of the quiet around me, but because of the noise within me. That's when I learned silence doesn't create discomfort, it reveals. In that quiet space, I met the thoughts I had been avoiding. I felt the emotions I had been suppressing. I became aware of the fears I had pushed beneath my busy schedule. But as the days passed, the silence that first felt like confrontation slowly became comfort. It became a sanctuary. It became a teacher. Silence taught me that I had been living in reaction, not reflection. I realized how quickly I spoke without thinking, how easily I consumed without discerning, how often I prayed without listening. Silence was not just the absence of sound, it was the presence of awareness. It brought my attention back to what mattered most. It exposed what was false and highlighted what was real. And perhaps more than anything, silence taught me how to listen. We live in a world that idolizes speaking, having a voice, giving opinions, expressing thoughts. But there is a deeper wisdom found in learning how to listen, not just to people, but to your own soul, to what your body is telling you, to what the spirit may be whispering in the quiet corners of your heart. In silence, I discovered that I don't need constant answers. I need presence. There were moments in those 10 minutes of quiet when I didn't receive a word of direction. And yet, I came away more grounded, more centered, more aware. Why? Because silence reintroduces you to the sacredness of being. It reminds you that you are not just a producer or a performer. You are a human soul created to commune with the divine. And if there's anything I've learned, it is this: silence is not wasted time. It is invested time. It clears the fog that crowds the mind. It unclutters the heart. It gives space for clarity to enter and for peace to reign. It's not passive, it's active rest. It's the soil in which deep transformation takes root. There's a reason why so many spiritual awakenings begin in silence. Why? Great revelations often follow solitude, because the loudest truths are often spoken in the quietest moments. When was the last time you were still long enough to hear yourself think? When was the last time you weren't reacting to life, but reflecting on it? We often think we need more information, more answers, more guidance, but often we just need more silence, because in silence, we remember who we are. We remember what we value. We remember what we're really searching for. And it's not noise, it's connection, it's presence, it's peace. That peace will not come from scrolling. It won't come from talking more. It won't come from trying harder. It will come when you turn everything down and listen. Silence teaches you to wait. Silence teaches you to notice. Silence teaches you that not every void must be filled, not every question must be answered, and not every moment must be loud. It gives your soul the room to stretch, to breathe, to awaken. And so I urge you, make time for silence. Not once, not occasionally, but as a daily habit. Start small. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Just you, your breath, and your awareness. Do not run from the silence. Sit with it. Learn from it. And you will find that the answers you were searching for were waiting in the quiet all along. Gratitude is not simply saying thank you. It is far more than a polite response or a feel-good emotion. Gratitude, when practiced with intention, becomes a lens, a way of seeing the world differently. It doesn't just change how you feel. It changes how you see. It reshapes reality. When I began my 7-day journey with 5 simple habits, I included gratitude because I had heard how powerful it could be. But I confess, at first, I treated it like a small add-on, something sweet, something light, a gentle reminder to be a little more positive. But I quickly learned that gratitude is not weak. It is not light. It is powerful. It is a weapon in the battle for your mind and your soul. And on the very first evening, I sat down to write 3 things I was grateful for. I thought it would be easy. But after a long day of stress, fatigue, and emotional heaviness, I stared at the page blank. The thoughts in my mind were louder than the blessings. All I could think about were the things that had gone wrong. The frustrations, the setbacks, the disappointments. But I had committed to the practice, so I forced myself to find something, anything. I wrote, I'm grateful for breath in my lungs. 2, I'm grateful for clean water to drink. 3, I'm grateful that today is over. It didn't feel life-changing in the moment, but something stirred in me. That night, I went to bed not feeling fixed, but feeling slightly lighter, a little more aware, a little more grounded. And so I did it again the next night, and the night after that. Each time it got a little easier to see. I started noticing small blessings throughout the day simply because I knew I'd need to write something down late. I paid attention to moments I used to overlook: the smile of a stranger, a kind word, the softness of my bed, the warmth of sunlight through the window. What I realized was this: gratitude trains your eyes. It shifts your focus from what's lacking to what's present. Doesn't deny hardship, but it gives hardship a new. Gratitude doesn't ignore pain. It stands beside it, and says, even here, there is still something beautiful. And slowly, gratitude began to rewire my emotion. Things that used to frustrate me began to soften. Things that overwhelmed me didn't hold the same weight. I wasn't ignoring reality. I was seeing a deeper part of it. You see, life is not just what happens to you. Life is how you interpret what happens to you. Two people can experience the same day. One walks away bitter, the other walks away blessed. The difference isn't the day. The difference is the lens. And gratitude is the lens that reveals what is holy and what is ordinary. I began to understand that gratitude is not a once-a-year feeling. It is a daily discipline. And like any discipline, it requires intention. It requires effort. But it produces fruit far beyond its effort. Do you know why gratitude is so powerful? Because it interrupts negativity. You cannot be deeply grateful and deeply bitter at the same time. One will eventually crowd out the other. And gratitude is gentle, but it is persistent. It grows quietly, but it transforms completely. I also discovered that gratitude realigns your spirit. It brings you back to the truth that every breath is a gift. Every moment is borrowed. Every blessing, whether big or small, is undeserved and yet freely given. Gratitude humbles you. It reminds you that you are not entitled. You are entrusted. And as your spirit humbles, your perspective changes. You stop asking, why don't I have more? And you start whispering, how can I honor what I already have? Gratitude teaches you that contentment is not found in having everything. It's found in recognizing the value of what's already in your hand. So now, every night I still write those 3 things. Sometimes they are profound. Sometimes they are simple. But they are never meaningless, because every time I choose gratitude, I shape my reality in a way that brings peace instead of panic, joy instead of judgment, and reverence instead of resentment. And I want to tell you, as gently and as urgently as I can, if you want to change your life, start with gratitude, not just as a feeling, but as a habit, a choice, a practice. You do not need a perfect life to be grateful. You simply need an open heart. And when that heart begins to see through the lens of gratitude, you'll find beauty in places you never noticed, strength in moments you once dreaded, and hope in corners that used to feel. Gratitude won't change your circumstances overnight, but it will absolutely change you. And when you change, everything else starts to look. There comes a moment in every life when the emotions run dry, when the excitement fades, when motivation disappears, when the music stops, the feelings go quiet, and all you're left with is a decision. That moment is a crossroads between emotion and obedience. We are living in a time when feelings have become king. People chase passion, live for inspiration, and wait for a surge of emotion before taking action. But what I have learned, and learned deeply, is that the greatest transformation doesn't happen when you feel like doing what's right. It happens when you do it even when you don't. Obedience is not glamorous. It doesn't give you goosebumps. It rarely earns applause, but it is holy. It is powerful. It is the place where real growth begins. When I began my 7-day journey with 5 simple habits, I was motivated. I felt hopeful, eager, even. But somewhere around the 3rd day, that motivation faded. My mind began to argue. My body wanted comfort. My emotions offered no fuel. And in that moment, I faced a simple question. Will I follow my feelings, or will I honor my decision? Because feelings are fragile. They shift like sand in the wind. They are affected by weather, hormones, moods, distractions, and even what we had for dinner. But obedience is grounded. It is rooted in conviction, not emotion. In vision, not convenience. You see, if I had only done what I felt like doing that week, I would have stopped. I would have missed the breakthrough that came on the other side of showing up one more time. Not because I was inspired, but because I was committed. Obedience says, I will do what is right even when it doesn't feel. Obedience says, I will remain faithful even when no one sees. Obedience says, I will choose what aligns with my values, not just what aligns with my mood. That's the difference between spiritual maturity and emotional immaturity. Emotion says, I'll act when I feel like it. Obedience says, I'll act because it's who I'm becoming. There is something sacred that happens when you act in obedience. Heaven takes notice. Because God doesn't just reward enthusiasm, He rewards faithfulness. And faithfulness is tested when the emotion is. Obedience strengthens your character. It trains your soul. It teaches you to lead your feelings, not be led by them. And the beautiful thing, feelings often follow obedience. When you keep showing up, when you keep honoring your commitments, when you stay consistent even when it's hard, you begin to feel different. Not because you chased a feeling, but because you built a foundation. It's like planting a seed in the ground. You don't get fruit on the first day or even the second, but you keep watering, you keep showing up, you trust the process. And in time, the fruit comes. Obedience waters your soul. It doesn't bring instant gratification, but it brings lasting. Now let me be clear. Emotions are not evil. They are part of our design. They help us feel, connect, empathize, and dream. But they were never meant to lead our lives. They are wonderful passengers, but terrible drivers. If I had waited until I felt ready to practice those 5 habits, I would still be waiting. But when I chose to obey, to keep going, to keep praying, to keep writing, to keep listening, to keep surrendering, I saw change. Change. Not massive, dramatic change all at once. A deep, quiet change. The kind of change that lasts. And that is what I want for you. You don't need to wait until the stars align. You don't need to wait until the feeling returns. You don't need a perfect mood to make holy moves. You just need to obey, to do the next right thing, to keep your promises to yourself, to trust that every step of obedience, no matter how small, is never wasted. Some of the most powerful moments in your life will not be the ones you felt the strongest. They will be the ones where you obeyed them. So don't let your emotions be the compass. Let your calling be. Let your values be. Let your purpose be. Because on the other side of obedience is fruit, is favor, not loud, not flashy, but real. So when the feelings fade, and they will, keep going, keep trusting, keep obeying, and you will find in time that the path of obedience leads not only to breakthrough, but to a deep, unshakable joy that no emotion can give and no circumstance can take away. And so, after just 7 days, just 5 simple, intentional habits, I discovered something I had long forgotten. Change does not require a lifetime of effort. It only asks for a willing heart and one small step of obedience. It was never about perfection. It was never about massive results. It was about quiet return. A return to stillness. A return to what matters most. In those 7 days, I learned that small beginnings are not small to God. That discipline is not a burden, but a path to inner. That when your spirit aligns with truth, the fog begins to lift. That silence, though uncomfortable at first, is one of the greatest teachers. That gratitude has the power to rewrite your inner world, and that the real power isn't in how you feel, but in whether or not you obey. These habits didn't change everything around me, but they changed me. And once the inner life is transformed, the outer life begins to follow. If you've been waiting for the perfect moment to begin, let me tell you, the moment is not next year, not next month, not when you feel ready. Now, take one step, choose one habit, create one pocket of stillness. Say yes to the whisper of discipline. Honor your spirit above your sin, and begin, because everything you're searching for, peace, clarity, strength, renewal, it's not waiting on the other side of more effort. It's waiting on the other side of one obedient step. And I promise you, if you give your heart fully, even just for 7 days, you will never be the same